Okay, welcome back to Ms. Frey's videos. So we're just going to recap what we went over yesterday. So we were learning about market equilibrium, which is where quantity supplied equals the quantity demanded. So what that means is if a company is producing goods and services, for example, Mojo Coffee, the coffees that Mojo supply, we call quantity supplied at all the different price points. If that supply is equal to what consumers want, so when you go and buy coffees, you are the consumers who are demanding a product. Okay, so when they are the same, that is where the equilibrium exists in a market. So at different price points, that's what affects the supply and the demand. So if we look at this schedule here, which talks about the market for economic textbooks, at the different prices, so we're starting at 20 and going down to 55, we can see that the quantity demanded moves from 10,000 down to 3,000. So this shows us the law of demand, because as the price increases from 20 to 55, as does the quantity demanded decreases, because at a higher price, as a consumer, you don't want to pay that price, do you? No. You, as a consumer, want to pay the lowest price, which is why the demand is higher at a lower price. Okay, so quantity demanded always will reflect the law of demand. And remember, the definition for the law of demand states that as the price of a good or service increases, the quantity demanded will decrease, and vice versa, assuming ceteris paribus. And ceteris paribus means that all factors other than price remain the same. Okay? So this is what we learned back in topic 1 about consumers, and now we're bringing it together, demand with supply, which is from producer's topic. So this we could label as the consumers, if that makes more sense for you. And this column we would label as producers. So if we look at just the quantity supplied now, we also can see that this reflects the law of supply. So as the price increases from $20 to $55, the quantity supplied also increases. So here we've got 2,000 and it's moving up to 12,000. So the law of supply states that as the price of a good or service increases, the quantity supplied will also increase, vice versa, assuming ceteris paribus. So the reason why the quantity supplied goes up is because the producers are receiving a higher profit margin at a higher price. So if you were selling this product, you would want to sell your product for the highest price possible, wouldn't you? Because you're going to make more profit. So that's why at a higher price, producers want to sell as much as possible. But consumers don't want to pay this high price. Consumers always want to pay the lowest price because they're saving money. Alright? So when we can find the balance between the two, we call that equilibrium. So you can find the equilibrium just by looking at the schedule. So if we were to look at the schedule here, at a particular price point, we would be able to see where quantity demanded is the same as quantity supplied. Who can see where it is equal? 6,000. So see how here 6,000 is our quantity demanded, and here 6,000 is our quantity supplied. So we could conclude that at $40, quantity demanded is equal to quantity supplied. So we now take this data and we can put it into a graph. So when we have a graph, this column, quantity demanded, would give us our demand curve. This column would give us our supply curve. And where they meet in the middle would be at the $40 on the price point, which is on the y-axis. So we can, from a graph, once we have graphed our data, and if you need to go back and see how that's done, go back to the previous video. Once you've got your graph, you can calculate the total revenue and the sales earned by the producers. So does anyone have any ideas on how we could figure that out? Can you please repeat the quick? Sorry, you go on.
Isn't it like, so you take what the producers have supplied and you take what the consumers have demanded and you do something with it, even fossil rights, I don't know.
Kind of.
And you find out how much of the supply has been sold
Yes.
by finding the consumer demand line.
Yeah. So if we want to calculate the total revenue, let's think about what is revenue. What does revenue mean?
Money.
That's the money coming in from consumers. So what are the two things we would need in this equation to figure out how much money is coming in?
Is it the amount it's selling for times the amount sold?
Correct. So we need to know how much is the product being sold for. So let's go back to our coffee example. Let's say a coffee is $4 and Mojo's sell 100 coffees. What would the revenue be?
$400.
400, correct. Alright, so that is how you would calculate the revenue. So we can look at that data from our graphs. So if we're looking at the market for mince pies, which are very unhealthy by the way. So let's, for example, use a dotted line to identify the quantity demanded by consumers at $3.50. Tell me what I would do to find this.
Do you see where the 350 is for the red line?
Mm-hmm.
Do you do a dotted line down to the 250, like horizontal?
Correct. So start at your price. You always start on the y-axis at the price point of $3.50. That's what it's asking us. Do our dotted lines across. Where it hits the demand curve, D stands for demand, we go down to our quantity. So this is now telling us that at $3.50, our quantity demanded would be equal to 250,000. Okay, so remember our axis is telling us what it is, what the metric is, so it's thousands. Yes.
You have to put the PEQE.
So if we were to put PEQE, so PE stands for what?
Equilibrium, right?
Price equilibrium. Where would our price equilibrium be on this graph?
The 251.
Yes, 250. So here's our equilibrium, this middle point here. So if we were to connect that middle point, this is where our PE would be labelled at price equilibrium. And where would our QE be?
350.
350, correct. So you do your dotted lines down, this would be quantity equilibrium. What would this label down here be, where our 250,000 was?
Is this? Oh yeah. P1. No.
So what is this?
Q1.
What is this axis?
QD.
Q, correct.
What is the D?
D, because it's demand, right? So quantity
I didn't know that.
demanded.
Oh, but then
What was this label up here? What?
PS or PD?
No.
QS, it's quantity supply. Oh, wait, sorry, no, not there. Sorry, I thought you meant the other side.
What's this one?
PD.
PS.
S.
Why is it PS?
D, it's a D. No, it's not. It's P. I don't know. This is different than what I have in my book.
It's just price, right? Because we're only looking at price. It could be P1. Because we've moved from PE up to P1. Our quantity has moved from equilibrium to QD1. So this is D because we're talking about the demand.
But are we still?
Okay? So let's go to the next step now. Any questions?
Just a really quick question. In the answers, it just had the horizontal line down to 250 and then no P1, but it had the QD.
Yeah, so technically you always have your labels on your graph, whether that is on your y-axis or your x-axis. In terms of the question has just asked us to find the quantity demanded, which is why they only put that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you don't have to do the price, or you do?
You usually would, yes.
Should I? I'll just do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so this question is now asking us that was the same question. Alright, I'm going to add in another question here. So if we were using our 350 price point, what would the revenue be for the producers?
350 times 250,000.
So revenue equals the price, which is 350 times what?
Quantity, which is 250,000. 875.
So P, so if we were to write this equation, R equals P times Q, right? So P times Q, which is 250, and the answer is
$875,000.
Cool. So if the question was to ask you to calculate the revenue, this is how you would do it. Any questions?
So that was your
Is it?